my early age was down south in Louisiana. And my granddad, they moved to Michigan because my grandmother's family were in Michigan. So then my dad and his family, we moved to Michigan. It's like following my grandparents. Years after I became an adult, and I was driving to California, and there's an old man at the post office. So I said, excuse me. I said, I've got two aunts that live here, Aunt Abel's, Annie, Abel's, Annie, and Doshi. He says, yeah. Well, I said, he said, you must be B's boy. I said, B, because my mother's name was Elizabeth. They call her B, right? You must be B's boy. I said, yeah, I was born in Franklinton, Louisiana. He said, no, you weren't born in Franklinton. You were born in Camp 9. I know when you were born. I knew when your mom was born. Meanwhile, I get back to Michigan, and I ask my mom. I said, I tell her the story. She said, who told you that? I said, is it true? And she never really told me whether it was true or not, right? But I found out I was born at Camp 9. The reason it was Camp 9, they're working on the railroad, and they had camps, and your family lived, this Camp 9, Camp 5, and it moved down there. A friend of mine said, you got to write a song about that, man. You got to write a song about that. So I did, yeah. So in fact, that was the name of one of the albums that I did, The Man from Camp 9.
They say he came from way down south with a heart that's strong and a song in his mouth. He wandered north and there he became an educated man in search of fortune and fame. He's the man from Camp 9.
I'm the oldest of 13 children, 13. As of now, I'm the oldest Davis that's alive, My parents, they died many years ago, and the Davises will go on because I've got sisters and brothers, and my sisters, they aren't Davises anymore. They're married and got kids. And my dad was a factory worker. Of course, my mother didn't have time to work anywhere with all the kids. 13 kids, she was busy all the time. My mother was ironing a shirt for me one day. I said, Ma, you missed that part there. She looked at me, gave me the iron, and said, from now on, you iron your own clothes. She never ironed another shirt for me. So I had to learn how to iron. I said, well, I would keep my big mouth shut. When I got the job at Fisher Body and I quit to take a job singing, my dad found out about it. He thought, he was going to kill me. You quit? I said, well, I want to be a singer. He said, that's good and fine, but what you going to do for a living? I found out what he was talking about there, too, over the years, but everything turned out fine. My godparents who raised me to a certain age, because they obviously lived next door to where my parents were. And my godfather was a minister, so I lived in church. And he'd do revivals, traveling around. I remember those days. I slept in church, Later on, I was in the church choir, in the junior choir, and then the senior choir over the years. So I grew up in church. That's the only thing I knew, the church music. And then later on in years, I became, understanding more like what I'd liked, And my all-time favorites was Nat King Cole and Billy Eckstine. They're my all-time favorite singers. When I was in high school, I went to a concert, and the singer was Larry Darnell from New Orleans. And he had a hit song called The Letter. And he started talking. He's on stage, and the band's playing, and he started talking. Yes, he had 3 letters from 3 fine stages of my heart. And you left me, this girl has left him, and And he says, the first one, he sort of takes it out and starts reading it. Dear Larry, darling, my wonderful one, I'll always be grateful for the things that you've done. And you said, then he said, you fool, you poor worthless fool, to think that that money could pay, but the times I spent with you till things went your way. And then the second says, and women was crying, right? Women they were crying, and I'm saying, I'd never seen anything like this. Women crying, right? So I walked up to the edge of the stage and looked down in their faces to see if they were really crying. I mean, they were just like, oh man. I was like, whoa, hey, I want to do this. I said, yeah, now this is what I want to do. It's a funny thing because many years later, here in California, in one of my albums, I recorded one of the songs that Larry Darnell did called For You, My Love. You know? Seeing Larry Darnell, and he was dressed, this guy was just immaculate, you know, like they painted that suit on him, right? And the women were just screaming, crying, and I'm saying, wow, you know, I can't believe this. You know, and like I said, I got down in their faces, just said, look, are you? And they were crying, man, they were crying. Oh, but that sort of influenced me a little bit also. I was drafted, and I was inducted at Fort Wayne, Detroit. So they shipped me to Camp Chaffee, Arkansas. That's unbelievable. And I mean, you talk about segregation. And I'm 19 years old, you know. I'm just thinking, what? People got to be crazy. What are you talking about? But anyway, there are a lot of different things happened during that time. But while you're on the post, you know, there was no segregation, you know. But in the little town, there was a whole different ballgame. But now, how I got to be in the paratroopers, I was in the 11th and the 101st. And what happens, after my first 8 weeks of basic training at Camp Chaffee, Arkansas, well, I went airborne because they'd come around and said, hey, would you know, try to get people to go to airborne. And you get an extra $50 a month, a jump, you know. I'm saying, oh, that's, you know, because we were making $80-some a month, right? So it's the three of us, Davis, Dumas, and Duncan, right? We all went airborne. So when we got there, we got off the train. You know, we see these guys, you know, bandaged up, around neck bandaged up and legs. Saying, whoa, wait a minute, maybe this is not what I want. So, and neither did Duncan or Dumas. So we went to the first sergeant, never will forget, Sergeant Gerhardt. And say, Sergeant, I'm the spokesman, right? Sergeant, this is not exactly what we want. He looked at me like, and I realized now how stupid that sounded. It's not exactly he said, Davis, we didn't ask you to come here, and nobody quits in my outfit. You go to jump school Monday morning. I said, yes, sir. And that was that. Well, I also found out you don't get $50 a jump. You get $50 a month. You might jump 10 times in a month. But, you know, I enjoyed the paratrooper because, you know, paratroopers has the best looking uniforms. The only branch of service can wear boots, blouse, and they spit shine. So you're clean if you're a paratrooper. Yeah. When we inducted, there was a white guy from Detroit also. We all went to Camp Chaffee, Arkansas. So the black area of town was on 9th Street, one street, okay? 9th Street, and there was 4 clubs, one here, one there, boom, boom, right? So he goes down with us one day, right? And they had to stop him. He said, oh, now you can't come here. Here's a white guy, they cannot go into black place, right? That's a switch. Anyway, and of course, black guy couldn't go into white clubs. And we said, hey, what do you mean he can't come here? Hey, this guy's, but that was what was happening at that time, you know? Hey, you don't forget those days. Oh. I had a musical director. Well, he was a director. He wasn't my musical director. His name was Eddie Beale. Eddie gave me jobs, got me jobs. I did a lot of background singing behind different big name stars, you know, me with a group and a whole bit. So I'm working on a job, the first job in Palm Springs. Eddie was the piano player. He played, when he was rehearsing, and he stopped playing to me and looked at me. He says, first of all, he said, you sing the pretty part pretty. And I thought about it. I said, no, he's right. You sing the pretty part pretty. Never forget that. Yeah, that's Eddie View. You sing the pretty part pretty. Well, I'll tell you about my first professional job was in Lansing, Michigan, which is where I grew up. And I got a job singing in a band downtown. And but before that happened, I was working at Fisher Body. And I quit Fisher Body because the guy who had the trio told me, yeah, you know, you got a job with me, right? So we went in to rehearse the night of the gig, and the owner said, what do you do? I said, well, I'm the singer. He said, no, we don't need a singer. I said, whoa, wait a minute. Now I realized I got to talk this guy into a job because I looked at the trio, leader of the trio, and he looked another way. So, well, I guess I don't know whether I've got this job or not. But anyway, I was working for nothing. So that's, you know, that was the beginning. It's a funny thing because of that same job, on that same job, a guy came in one night named Perry Jessup. He's a businessman. And he said, if you're not tied up, I got some money, I'll put it behind you if you know. And I said, well, yeah, I'm ready. I'm not tied up. I'm ready. And anyway, so we signed a contract for a year. And I was to make a certain amount of money in that year or either party cancel the contract. He had a connection in Los Angeles. He had a private plane, pilot. We flew to Los Angeles. But we stopped in Denver. That's where I first met Rudy Hunter and the Fabulous Tones. He had some work done on the plane. And I went in, I told them what I do. And so they called me up to sing, right? So I got up and sang a song with the Fabulous Tones. And about 6 months later, I'm in Los Angeles. I come out of a theater, and so were the Fabulous Tones. Rudy Hunter and his wife and a couple of the guys. He says, hey, what are you doing? I said, well, I was driving a truck for Rolls Royals cheesecake, frozen cheesecake. That's what I was doing. So he said, his lead singer, one of his lead singers had just left. He says, you got a job if you want it. Boom. That was my job with the Fabulous Tone. That's where we started. Yeah, well, we worked everywhere. Yeah, we were working in Los Angeles first, yeah. But then we started traveling to Rapid City, South Dakota, and Casper, Wyoming, and all those places. And my first time in Vegas, working Vegas, was with the Fabulous Tones. And we were working at the Dunes. Well, that doesn't exist anymore. It's something else now. Like most of the places I work don't exist anymore. There's something else now. I work the Sands. There's no Sands anymore. I work Maxims. I work the Sahara. None of those exist anymore. They're all something else now. Anyway, I worked them. But just with the Fabulous Tones, at the Dunes, we were second billing to every act. In 1962 or 63, I came to Palm Springs. It was my first job in Palm Springs at the Hilltop Room with Ace Hutchins. Yeah. And from there to the Howard Manor. And that's where everything, I worked the Howard Manor, had the Art Graham Trio. I did that for a long time, living in LA and transferring backwards and forth. Well, when I was with the Fabulous Tones, and we were in Rapid City, South Dakota, and at the Canyon Lake Supper Club, which was very nice, And so there's a lady that would come in to see us, 2 or 3 times a week. And, her name was Joan Smith at the time. Yes, Joan Smith. And, years later, I'm back in Los Angeles, and I get a call from Shirley, the girl in the Fabulous Tones. She's living in Rapid City. She still does. She said, have you talked to Joan? I said, Joan who? She said, Joan Kroc. Why would I be talking to Joan Kroc? This woman's a multi-millionaire. Ray Kroc's wife, right? She said, no, well, Joan Kroc, this is Joan Smith. I said, oh, well, that's wonderful. So the place that Tad works, Joan Kroc had a birthday party, and we were invited. It was like, old fun week because, in Rapid City, we used to go by the house, jam after they get up from work. Well, Ray Kroc used to play little jazz piano. But anyway, so Joan Kroc's birthday, they come and get my wife to do the bunny hop around the bar, all around the... And she had never done the bunny hop before. She says, Well, I guess it worked. The big thing that happened is we're rehearsing. We come in from LA. We're opening tonight at the Howard Manor. So we're rehearsing. There are people at the bar. And this one guy comes over. I'll never forget, he had on a blue jumpsuit. This guy comes over to him and says, "Hey, kid, can you sing San Francisco?" I said, "Yeah, So I told that guy, I said, "Let's rehearse it anyway, because we'll probably sing it tonight, And he goes back to the bar, rehearse San Francisco, right? So he said, "I'm going to talk to Jack about you. I'm going to talk to Jack." I said, "Jack, I don't know who Jack is." I went along with whatever he said, because he was half drunk anyway, right? Anyway, about 2 weeks later, we do a set, I take a break and walk to the bar. The phone's on the side of the bar where the waitress said, "Is this guy in the same jumpsuit, same blue jumpsuit?" He's on the phone. He said, "Hey, come here, kid, talk to Jack. Talk to Jack." I look at him. I take the phone. It's Jack Entrada at the Sands Hotel, who was the owner of the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. I'm saying, whoa. Now I'm like, he said, "I heard about you," and blah, blah, blah. He said, "Can you come up for an audition in Vegas?" I said, "Sure, come on my day off. I'd be glad to." Of course, right? Drive to Vegas, get a room there, because this audition was at the Sands Hotel. And I'm auditioning for a spot in the lounge. Right? So we said, well, all right, we'll hire a bass player, find a bass player in town. At least have a piano and bass, right? So the audition is set up in the Copa Room, the big showroom. This is where Sinatra works. In fact, Dean Martin was appearing in the showroom at the time, right? Yeah, I walk up on the stage. Nobody set up a microphone, And I said, I know I can't get this job, And this is what I'm saying to myself. There's no way, everything's going wrong, Can't get this job. So they finally get me a microphone. And I did about 3 songs. But all of a sudden, who I'm doing the audition for, right? All of a sudden comes in, sits out. Jack Entrada, the owner of the Sands, and I'm auditioning in the showroom. Jack Entrada, Frank Sinatra, and Dean Martin's wife. 3. Those are 3 people, And I'm singing, and I did about 4 songs, 5 songs. And Sinatra said, "What are you trying to do, burn the kid's voice out? Why don't you put him to work?" So I've got, this is my first big shot in Vegas, right? So that went on, But here's a killer part. My first shot in Vegas, and when I got a call to go, I had to call back and turn it down, because I'm working at the Howard Manor in Palm Springs, and Dave Margolis, the owner, said, no, you can go to Vegas anytime. No, you can't go now. He wouldn't let me out of the contract. So I had to call back, and Jack Entrada's secretary, she sort of laughed, because she said, "There'll be another opening, and I'll call you," which did happen. And that was my first big thing in Vegas. I was there for quite a while. One night, I saw them setting up this long table and putting Jack Daniels bottles on it. I said, "Oh, Sinatra's coming in," right? He came in, about 10 people. And after the set I did, he said, "Hey, Jesse, are they treating you okay?" I said, "Oh, yes, wonderful." Yes, they're treating me great. And that's all he said, Years went on. I worked with Dunes, Maxims, Sahara, So many times I worked in Palm Springs. But some of the top things that happened, people that came in to see me, like Kim Novak, Jackie DeShannon, Rita Hayworth, those are good days. When I was working at the Iron Gate, Palm Desert, some guys just come in, sit at the bar, and they said they're going to bring in Betty Ford. They worked for the Fords, right? I said, "Oh, yeah, sure, thank you." Yeah. So what happens? A week later, they bring in Betty Ford, right? And her daughter and a couple other people, right? Then after I finished singing, that set, they came and got me and took me over to the table. She said the president, would be there, but he was in Los Angeles on some kind of business thing. Oh, I understand. So he'll come back. Then she asked me, she says, "Can you dance?" I said, "Well, yeah." And I never really danced with anybody when I'm working, because I'd have to dance with everybody, I said, "Well, of course, yes, She said, "Would you like to dance?" I said, "Yeah." So I'm dancing with the president's wife, right? Oh, man, right? So this goes on. When they leave, she said, Nick, when Ford was in town, she'd come in, her husband, right? About a week later, they all come in. In fact, the owner of the hotel, the Iron Gate, he said, you know, you don't know who's here. I said, who knows? He said, President Ford and his wife. He said, there's security guards all in the patio there. I'm coming out of my room. It's security guards. I said, oh, man, Secret Service. Oh, so I'm saying, okay. So they come and get me after the set, right? Take me back over take me to the table. And we meet the president. He was also from Michigan because he played football at the University of Michigan. So we were talking sports and blah, blah, and everything. So when they got ready to leave, they alert all the security outside. Right? And then, they get up and leave. Well, everybody's standing, and I'm standing, I'm standing with them. And the Betty Ford is still sitting, I said, oh, I guess everybody's ready to leave. She says, I'm not. I'm saying, oh. She said, we haven't had our dance. I'm saying, oh, no. Is the president standing here, and I'm going to get his wife and go dance? Oh, man. I'm saying, oh, they're going to send me to Siberia. But anyway, he was very cool. I get up and dance with it, and he got one of the security girls, which I didn't even know there was security, and he got on the phone and danced, so he didn't look like, because everybody's standing, and security is looking because they move, from when you're leaving. So that was one of my great experiences, dancing with the president's wife twice. And I'll tell you something else that happened. Because of that, I guess it had a nice write-up in the paper about it. Blah, blah, blah. Women, middle-aged women, elder women, start coming in the club like you couldn't believe. Because I guess if Betty Ford was there, then they wanted to be there. I said, okay. It's all right with me. One of the things that happened, I came into town, Palm Springs, and appearing at the Chi-Chi was Johnny Mathis. So, I'm there a day early, so I'll go see Johnny Mathis' show. The maitre d', I knew Bob Cates. And there's a long bar in the back of the Chi-Chi, and I sit there, I'm alone by myself, and the place is full. Full orchestra, violins, and the whole bit. And Bob Cates came over, he said, hey, Jesse, he said, why don't you do the show tonight? Mathis is not here. I said, look, are you crazy? What do you mean, do the show? A full orchestra here, a house full of people, and some of these people know me, right? You got to be kidding. So he goes and brings back Mathis's musical director. And the director said, well, the doctor said if he took off tonight, he'd make the rest of the week. The comedian Alan Drake was on. He doesn't know Mathis is not there. Nobody in the audience know that Mathis is not there. He comes back and they tell him Mathis is not there, Jesse Davis is going to substitute. He goes back, he said, ladies and gentlemen, Mathis had a death in the family, and he couldn't make it, but a friend of his flew down from San Francisco to do the show. And people out there know me, right? So anyway, I'm on, right? And I run, things are going good. I got this full orchestra behind me, violins, and I mentioned before, they played the song More. I sang the song through one time. And then the lights went out in the house, and this spotlight hit the ball, and all these sparklers going on all over the house, and all these violins come in. And I'm saying to myself, anybody that can't sing behind all this can't sing. At the end of the show, I get a standing ovation, for a lot of people who were expecting Johnny Mathis. That's a good memory. I'll ever remember that. Yeah. Anyway, understand now, I've never met Mathis yet at this time. So the following week, I go by and see Mathis, my night off. So Bob Cates takes me back to his dressing room and knocks on the door. He said, Johnny, this is Jesse Davis. He did the show for you the other night. He said, oh, thanks so very much. He says, I bet the poor bastard didn't even have time to have a drink. I'm going to tell you what I said to him. My first time in Australia, I was at the Latin Quarter, and they met me at the airport. The owner of the club, Sammy Lee. You know, I had my clothing bag and all the music, and I'm looking at, I see all these cameras, and I'm wondering who's on the flight. You know, I'm like trying to figure who are they on, and all of a sudden, I see they're on me. So, whoa, all right. I started stepping up a little bit then, right? Anyway, I get into a baggage check. Guy comes over, he says, yeah, your bag's okay, Mr. Lee, take care of it. I didn't have to go through the baggage check or nothing. Sammy Lee had it all set. Also, my first press conference was held at the airport in Sydney, Australia. I'd never had a press conference in my life, you know. Anyway, and Sammy was upset because he didn't think there was enough of them. And what had happened is the Prime Minister of Australia had drowned about 2 days before, or whatever. And so that was a big situation that was happening. Anyway, so he said, come on, I got to get this man out. Got to get him back to the club. They had another press thing at the club. And the dancers had a show built around me called the Millie Show from the movie Thoroughly Marvin and Millie. And the girl dances on swings and the whole bit. We get there, there's more press there, blah, blah, blah. And he says, you know, I told him a couple of things, but you can handle it. You know, that's when he says, so are you Sammy Davis's cousin? No, I'm not Sammy Davis's cousin. I'm not going to stand there and lie, and, you know, to the press on television. No. In fact, I had never met Sammy Davis Jr. But anyway, he's got this whole show built around me. I had a rehearsal, opening night. I'm on stage, and all these girls in swings, swinging past me, and dancers around. I'm saying, oh man, this is, I can live with this. Later, I went on to the Lido in Melbourne, Australia. This was a big show, but I think it's 10 or 15, about 15 dancers, the whole bit. So the owner of the hotel, David McAray, he said, do you have a lighting chart? I said, no, I'd never had a lighting chart in my life, right? Anyway, so he sat down in front of the stage on the chair in the rehearsal and wrote out a lighting chart. And he said, you can have this. He said, in the States, this will cost you at least $5,000. Thank you, Mr. McAray. Thank you. Oh, but I had, fantastic. That was, now I got all, you know, the big band thing, everything's going for me. There's a show going on down the street called Boys in the Band. Francis Faye had closed just before me at the Lido, and we're staying in the same hotel. So we're all going down to see Boys in the Band, which is about a block from the hotel. You could walk, you know, to the. No, she's a star. No. We're waiting for the cab, the driver. We get there. Now we're 30 minutes late. The show hasn't started. They're holding the curtain until we get there. Yeah, I don't know this at the time, but all of a sudden I'm realizing what's going on, and I'm embarrassed. Right? We walk in to the club. The minute we walk in and sit down, boom, lights. Show starts. You know, I'm saying, whoa, man. And people looking at us like, you know, they're sitting there waiting. They don't know what they're waiting for. But Francis Faye, you know, he's a star. That's the way it is.
Jesse Davis was supposed to leave for home a week ago, but he's delayed his departure just to do this bandstand.
And all by yourself.
I was booked into New Zealand, Auckland, New Zealand. And the big thing about it was they met me at the airport, took me directly to, I was there going to be there 2 weeks, took me directly to the bank, paid me in cash money right there at the bank, and I haven't even gotten to my hotel yet. I'm saying, no, I like this. This never got paid before the gig. I was working at a club in San Diego. We walk in one night, my wife and I, and there's a young couple that runs up to me at the door. And I couldn't understand what they were saying. You know, I thought they were asking for an autograph or something, right? Well, they want to know, I met, I was Jesse Davis. Yeah, I'm Jesse Davis. It was the same Jesse Davis on the marquee. That's why they were there. And they were there on a honeymoon from London. So I didn't understand why they were so excited. Anyway, but they wanted to know if I was the same Jesse Davis. And the guy started humming the song. And the one that's a collector's item. Kind of hang on in there, girl, right? I'm saying, yeah, I recorded that, which is what they were asking me. And I couldn't understand the heavy brogue that they had. They end up sending me a copy. This is the first time I knew about the England Soul thing. They sent me a copy of my record. They told me it was a collector's item. What? So then my wife gets on the phone and start calling England, contacting people, finding out all about this. Oh, everybody over there know me. They know the song. Musicians knew the song. When they brought me over, had one rehearsal. I hadn't never sang this song live. I recorded it many, many years ago. It was never released. Never released here in America, right? Collector's item. Now, so I'm having a rehearsal. My wife's sitting there. So I switch one of the verses, And she said, you can't do that. These people know that song. And I was like, are you the real Jesse Davis? Everybody gathered around the stage and they're singing this song with me. Yeah, that was the first time I had that happen. I was like, oh, wow. Better do this right, because everybody knows it. Then I had an hour or 2 hour autograph session after the show. I was working in Acapulco. There's a guy and his wife sitting there in the audience, and the maitre d' comes over and he says, this couple wants you to come out and have a drink with him, right? I go over, and it's Joe Camp, whom, I don't know who Joe Camp was at the time. Well, he was the producer of Benji. They had made a movie, Benji. He asked me, had I seen it? I said, well, no, I hadn't, He says, are you doing any recording? I said, yeah, well, I did an album. He said, well, who produced you? I said, well, I did it myself. I didn't have anybody to produce me. He says, did you have any objection to anybody else producing you? I said, no. So he said, if I can do anything for you, when you get back to San Diego, he said, give me a call. Well, before I left Acapulco, I get a letter in the sheet music to Benji's theme. And they said, the minute I get back, call me, right? Well, I got back to San Diego, called him. He flew me to Dallas, where his offices were. We did an audition on a couple of songs. And they said, all right, we'll record next week in Los Angeles. I'm saying, whoa, now this is taking care of business, right? They had the songs. I did Benji's theme. They had a full orchestra at United Studios in Los Angeles. Just fantastic, Benji's theme and 3 or 4 other songs I did.
I feel love.
Joe Camp calls me one day. He said, I'm doing the Phenomenon of Benji. Would you like to be in it? I said, I'd love to be in it. Right? We were supposed to go to England, but the dog would have to go into quarantine for a week or something in London. So we bypassed England, went to Hawaii. First place was Hawaii. From Hawaii, we went to Athens, Greece, filmed at the Acropolis. I got a white suit on. I'm on one of these big rocks on the Acropolis. Yeah, all kind of little kids and everybody running around. It was a fantastic trip. I went from Washington, D.C. to Paris on the Concorde. And it's not really a big plane. I think they have 100 seats. They sell 90 seats or whatever. Unbelievable flight. 3 hours and 39 minutes to Paris. I'll never forget that. And Benji. This is all because of Benji, right? Because it was the Phenomenon of Benji. They were in Hawaii and had a hula dancers meeting and stuff.
I feel love.
In Venice, we were filming. I'm on a gondola right there, and the dog is on there, and I'm singing because I'd done the recordings in L.A. All of a sudden, one of the guys on the camera on the bridge filming, hey Jesse, there are 2 girls here know you from San Diego. I said, cut. So said, cut. Well, the two girls used to come in to see me at the pavilion. Well, you know, they had dinner with us, and you know, and Benji, people don't understand, Benji have dinner at the table also. So there's about 8 or 9 of us, you know. And Benji has his own steaks, his own food, and his own water, because in other countries, if he gets sick, you know, because a lot of people get sick of the water, he gets sick, so we're all out of business. Right? Oh, we had some fantastic times. Yeah, the producer, Joe Camp, if things were slow, he said, well, you know, guess we better take Benji for a walk. Because when you take Benji for a walk, women come out of the woodworks. Benjamin in Italy, Benjamino, oh, Benjamino. Had some fantastic times with Benji, the Phenomenon of Benji. Yeah, we ended the trip in Nashville for the Grand Ole Opry.
And now let's welcome Benji's good friend, Mr. Jesse Davis.
Your sunshine smiles, your skies are blue, your spring is blossoming, and so are you. Well, that's the second one of Benji's songs that I've recorded. And traveling around with him, I found that we have something very special in common. We enjoy making people happy. And when Benji's around, you can be sure of one thing: there will be a lot of happy people, because he always affects them the same way. You can turn them around anytime you're feeling down. You can dry a tear just by being near.
I have performed all over the world in great venues. I've had TV and film appearances and met and worked with many great people along the way. Doing the filming of the Phenomenon of Benji, we went through all these European countries: Paris, Venice, Athens, Greece. So Matt, Switzerland is where the Matterhorn is. You've seen pictures of it, I'm sure. Well, they got one at Disneyland. I would remind young people that life and success is a journey, not just a destination. And thanks to the good Lord above, I am very blessed to still be on that journey.
The champagne, the rhapsody that your sunshine smiles on me. You are the someone who stopped to tell me my name.
The country singing, Charlie Rich was there. Because he first recorded the first movie, Benji movie, he recorded the song. He refused, for some reason, to do it in his nightclub act. So I meet Charlie Rich. And he came late, you know, he's a big star, right?
I'll never forget when I was asked to sing that song in Benji's first movie, because I almost didn't do it.
we're both sitting on stools. I'm sitting on a stool here. He's sitting on the stool there. And we're singing the Benji theme songs, about 3 or 4 different songs. We're singing parts of each song. And he'd sing a part, and I'd sing a part, right? And Benji and this orchestra's playing. They've got a thing like this that goes all the way on, at least to the ceiling here, with the ladders. Benji comes out, climbs up that ladder, and it's like a diving board on the end. He's on the thing, right? And we're singing, and the orchestra's playing, blah, blah, blah. And this is the finale of the Phenomenon of Benji. And they had a bone about that big, dog bone about that big, and on a rope that's hanging all the way down to the floor. And Benji puts his mouth on it, pulls it up, puts his foot on it, pulls that bone all the way up to the top. And this was the finale of the thing. I mean, the orchestra, and people were screaming because the Grand Ole Opry was jammed with people. But that was the end of the Phenomenon of Benji. Unbelievable dog, man. We did Benji at Marineland, where Benji becomes the first dog to scuba dive. They brought a guy over from England who built one of those bubble things for Benji. There's a scene where I'm standing on this diving board, and they've got these fish, big groupers and a big, huge fish in the bottom of this tank. Benji's going to pull this rope, and I'm going to fall in this pool, right? And they said, well, swim real fast because if, those groupers or whatever will grab your feet. And they had divers with poles in the water, down under. I'm singing, and Benji walks over, unties the rope, and the board goes down, and I fall. I was swimming so fast because I'm scared. I'm so, but yeah, do another take. I said, no. Just look scared. I said, I did look scared. I'm scared. Oh, but all the things that happened.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Can a dog survive when he takes a dive? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Can a dog survive when he takes a dive?
Another thing, this gondola, Benji's on the gondola, and the waves come in it, I mean, they turned it over, and everybody went to save the dog. The dog swam, and I'm holding on. I'm saying, "Oh man!" I want to tell you what I said. I said, "What the hell with you? Save Benji. He's the star." So we did the Phenomenon of Benji. Then we did Humps, which we filmed at the old movie studios in Tucson. It was based on the true story. The government were experimenting with camels in the desert in the 1850s. And they ended up turning them loose in the desert, right? So this is what Humps was based on. And then there's a Latin group at the finale. We're all in the bar, and I'm in the group singing, a song we recorded back called Still Thinking About You. The only way to get to Zamet is a train, and you get off, and you go into the town of Zamet. And I made a mistake because I was the first one to arrive. They sent a guy ahead of us. This is the Phenomenon of Benji. I got there, checked in, and I get to my room. I said, wait a minute, this little room? I don't like it. I went downstairs, and as I went downstairs to the front desk, Joe Camp, the producer, was arriving. He says, everything all right? I said, I don't like my room. It's just, I'm in a little room that's, He says, give him whatever room he wants. Well, I felt real stupid later because it turned out that all the rooms were small and they were all the same size. And here I'm in Mr. Prima Donna, who's second billing to Benji, looked stupid. Oh, man, I felt stupid. All the rooms were small. I used to work at La Costa Country Club. At that time, they had a beautiful showroom and 2 entertainers. And I was working opposite the late, great Billy Daniels, who is a great showman. I mean, he is one of the great showmen. And I'd do a set, and he'd do a set. I learned my mic technique from Billy Daniels and Billy Eckstein, my two, and Nat King Cole, my all-time favorite singers. But Billy Daniels mostly, because when you hit the high note, if you got a strong voice, especially when you hit the high notes, you pull the mic away, because otherwise you're blasting, right? The no notes, you bring it closer to you. I met my other idol, Billy Eckstein, in Australia. I never worked with him, but I had the pleasure of meeting him and listening to him. I noticed he had a thing when he was doing his show, and he introduced the band, and his accompanist was Benny Payne. And when he introduced Benny Payne, he said, "My right tonsil." Benny Payne, his right tonsil. I said, "Oh, okay, I would never forget that." Oh. I did a thing in San Francisco. I was living in LA at the time. San Francisco at Jazzville and down on Broadway. And I'm singing with the Harold Land, Carmel Jones Quintet. I mean, they're jazz, and most of everything they play are originals. And I had my own keyboard player. So when we got hired for the job, I was able to take my keyboard player. And he was a fantastic keyboard player. And we'd do a set, he would be soaking wet playing with these guys. Because I mean, and like I say, you got to read everything. It's and they did stuff tempos like, you know what I'm saying? But I went over very good, you know what I'm saying? I'm thinking, oh, they want heavy jazz here, heavy jazz. Name of the place is Jazzville. But it worked out great. And a lot of people, like I said, I saw Larry Darnell. He was pretty big then. Nobody knows who he is now. I had the pleasure of meeting Duke Ellington. I met Duke Ellington in Beverly Hills. He was at the Hollywood Bowl in his house in Beverly Hills. We invited to his room. He had one lady from San Diego was there, and I'll never forget, her name was Rita. And he had a little, electric keyboard in his room. My first time meeting Duke Ellington, great Duke Ellington. He says, "Yeah, Jesse, why don't you write some words for this song?" What? Duke Ellington asked me to write some words, and I'm just, I didn't know. I was like, I couldn't even think of a word. This is Duke Ellington, one of the greatest ever. Went to the recording session at United Studios, and Duke Ellington, Ella Fitzgerald, and Johnny Ray. Now, people who don't know Johnny Ray, well, Johnny Ray had the song Cry, Little White Cloud That Cried. He had the big hit. But Johnny Ray was also deaf. So what he did when in the recording studio, when he got ready to record it, he laid down on the floor, and when they first had it play it through for him, and I guess it's the vibration, I don't know how he did it, but I guess the vibration, him laying on the floor. And then he got in the booth and sang the song. It was amazing. He made a couple of movies too, Johnny Ray. Ella Fitzgerald is a perfectionist. Watch Duke, because Ella Fitzgerald's going to want to record it again. Watch what Duke will do. So when she wanted to do it again, he would over put his arms around her, talk to her. That was the take they did. He didn't do another take. I went to Capitol Records, trying to get a job at Capitol Records when I was in Hollywood, living in Hollywood. They did a demo and they said, well, you got a nice voice, we like your voice, but we don't need another Johnny Mathis type. I said, oh, thanks a lot. Or what's wrong with that type? He's doing great. But anyway, I didn't get a job at Capitol, so I ended up with Era. A lot of things that I recorded many, many years ago, early in my career, 45s, they found their way to England. There's a record company called Ace Records in London, and they bought all the catalog from Era, E-R-A, Era Records in Los Angeles. They bought stuff that I did years and years ago. One of the songs turns out to be a classic collector's item on eBay. Now, then they've taken a couple of things that I've written and recorded. In fact, when I did the Benji thing and recorded Benji's theme, there's a full-page article. Well, somebody put the article on eBay, and it's been sold. Somebody's I'm saying, whoa. Yeah, well, Lou Rawls and I, we were running around Hollywood trying to get jobs, singing for nothing wherever, doing auditions. And Lou ends up getting a Budweiser commercial. And things just, boom, went off. And here I'm still looking for jobs. Said, thanks, buddy. You didn't get me in on this. Oh, but we had some great times. Lou Rawls had been singing in a gospel group. Lou Rawls did a gospel group. Another singer friend of mine, Mel Carter, he was in a gospel group, And so many of the guys were in gospel groups. Sam Cooke was in a gospel group. Then Lou Rawls gets a hit, gets a job with Capitol Records. And then the rest there is history. We used to hang around together, but, he started making money. He was traveling everywhere, And, Lou Rawls had a lot of hits. The last one he had, I recorded later, You'll Never Find. In fact, Darcy and I did a duet album, and You'll Never Find was under Lou Rawls. Well, some of the clubs that I worked in Los Angeles and Hollywood was Marshall Edson's Ye Little Club, where Jack Jones started, and a lot of the biggest, names in the business at the Ye Little Club. And then I worked the Melody Room on Sunset Boulevard. I worked Sneaky Pete's on Sunset Boulevard. Then the Pied Piper on the West Side. Over the years, I've worked all kind of places in Los Angeles. And I hardly ever go back there anymore. In Hollywood also, on La Cienega Boulevard, I worked at Red Fox's. You know the comedian Red Fox? Well, Red Fox took over the Slate Brothers restaurant, nightclub and restaurant. So he hired me. We were both working in Las Vegas at one time, years later. He said, oh, good singing Jesse Davis. Oh, yeah, hey, I remember you. Oh, he was great. He was great. While I was in Acapulco, I did television in Mexico City, Siempre en Domingo, and with Raul Velasco. And I worked with some of the greatest singers in Mexico. Brothers Castro, Jose. These are great, and some of the girl singers also. But that was fantastic. Oh. My first job in Hawaii was at the Romney Room. This is beautiful because up front were disco girls, and in the back was me and a girl dancer called Princess Tana, a topless girl dancer. Right? And she'd take a chair on stage with her, and she'd bring up a guy out of the audience and make him her king, put a little crown on his head, right? And she'd dance all around him, slapping him in the face with ta-ta-ta. But he can't do nothing, just sit there, right? And the place was full all the time because they came to see her, I said, well, because there are a lot of military, there's a military base, and you had a lot of those guys been in submarines underwater for 3 or 4 months, and they want to see a girl. I said, well, I can't just sit and sing love songs to these guys. So I asked that guy, what do you want to hear? And everything they requested was a love song. How wrong I was there. That taught me a lesson. When I first worked in Lake Tahoe, I worked at Cal Neva, which used to be, in the old days, Sinatra's club. That's where Sinatra and Sammy Davis, everybody worked. So that got to be a pretty regular gig for me in Lake Tahoe. And then I worked Harris. I worked the MGM Grand in Reno. So I had some nice runs in Nevada, Lake Tahoe. I'm really a ballad singer, but I sing everything. Can't stick to one thing nowadays because I've got to do a little of everything. Like here, when I'm working here in San Diego, I'm listed as a jazz singer, but I sing the American Songbook. I do some blues, I do rock, do pop stuff. And I think what I'm doing, that's what you got to do, a little of everything. My weakness was probably being a soul singer, because I like the pretty stuff. I'd have to tell them that they've got to have belief in themselves, the thing inside of you that you want to do it worse than anything. It doesn't mean that it's always going to happen because, nothing always happens. But you got a chance, and you have to, believe in what you believe in, and you have to sort of take care of yourself also, because, what comes around goes around, And that a lot of people can sing very good, but nobody likes them, because they're some nasty people, because, and everybody knows when you're nasty because it comes through. So that's about all I can tell them. You just believe in yourself and carry yourself in a certain way because people have to respect you. I lived in church almost. I have my spiritual beliefs, yes, and I've always had them. I was raised with them, and I still have them. And as a matter of fact, we go to church every Sunday still. I've got a nice family. I've got 2 sons, and I've got grandkids. I hate to say it, but I've got some great grandkids, and a lot of them. I'm married. My wife, Diane, she does just about everything. I remember Billy Eckstine, he introduced his keyboard player, Benny Payne. He says, "My right tonsil." Well, my wife, Diane, she's my left tonsil. Because she does everything. So I really can't complain too much. Things have been very good for me.
They say he came from way down south with a heart that's strong and a song in his mouth. He wandered north and there he became an educated man in search of fortune and fame. He's the man, he's the man from Camp 9. He wandered across the railroad track and swore to God he'd never come back. Had a son that he wanted to see become the things he never could be.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Jesse Davis.
Oh, the man from Camp 9. When I think of the old man who revealed to me from where I came and who I long to be, I looked in the mirror and what did I see? The man from Camp 9 is me. Oh, I'm the man from Camp 9. They say he came from way down south with a heart that's strong and a song in his mouth. He wandered north and there he became an educated man in search of fortune and fame. He's the man, he's the man from Camp 9. He wandered across the railroad track and swore to God he'd never come back. Had a son that he wanted to see become the things he never could be. He's the man, oh, the man.